Let's be honest, if leadership actually mattered, this whole place would have crashed years ago. The room laughed, not nervously, confidently. The man who said it didn't look around to check for approval. He didn't have to. He was used to being agreed with. Loud, polished, always the first to talk. But across the room, a man in a plain black hoodie sipped his coffee quietly. No name tag, no introduction, just a presence. Listening, watching. He didn't laugh. Because the joke wasn't about leadership in general. It was about him. He just hadn't been recognized yet. What would you do if your staff said your leadership didn't matter, and they didn't know you were in the room? 1. Laugh it off and leave. 2. Take notes, say nothing. 3. Fire them on the spot. 4. Stay quiet and dig until you find out why the company didn't collapse. Comment your answer below. And don't skip ahead. Because what this CEO finds at the bottom of the company retreat wasn't betrayal. It was something deeper. Jackson Cole never planned to go undercover. Not at this stage in his career. Not when his face had been in Forbes just 8 months ago next to the headline, Tech's Quiet Titan. His company, Veracor, had survived what no one else did. 2 industry crashes, a near acquisition, 3 top competitors wiped, off the map. But somehow, Veracor remained standing. Not thriving, not breaking records, but standing. He couldn't explain it, because in all honesty, he hadn't been paying attention. A health scare had pulled him out of day-to-day operations nearly a year ago. He told the board he'd be back in 2 months. It turned into 10. His COO handled the business. His team leads managed product and culture. Jackson focused on recovery. But in the quiet of his home office, he kept reading internal memos that didn't make sense. Numbers that felt disconnected from the tone of the teams. Staff survey data showing low morale, yet rising productivity. Reports of clashing leadership styles, yet record client retention. And then, something strange. His assistant forwarded a team retreat itinerary last month. The subject line, "Should I RSVP for you?" Jackson's name was already on the list. He wasn't the one who added it. That's when he made the decision. He wouldn't show up as CEO. He'd go as a late added consultant. Quiet, observing, just to understand why his company hadn't collapsed, when it probably should have. The retreat was held at a quiet eco-lodge on the Oregon coast. 4 days. Team building, cross-departmental trust games, strategy workshops, and unfiltered conversation. Jackson checked in under a different name. No spotlight, no public intro. He watched as mid-level managers and leads grouped themselves by familiarity and status, and one name kept surfacing. Not his, not the COO's, a different one. Elias. Elias basically kept things glued together while everything was falling apart, one woman whispered during a coffee break. "Oh, totally," another replied. "He doesn't even have a title that matches what he does. But without him, we'd be dead." Jackson made note of it. Later that evening, he found Elias, standing near the campfire, not talking, just holding a notebook and watching 2 junior engineers argue about the difference between working smart and working loud. Elias was tall, black, probably mid-30s, wore a faded Veracor fleece and didn't say much. But when he did, people listened. Not out of fear, out of trust. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't even on the retreat agenda. But somehow, Elias had gravity, and Jackson wanted to know why. The second morning started before sunrise. Most of the retreat attendees were still asleep, their name badges resting on nightstands and their lanyards tangled beside half-empty glasses of cheap retreat wine. But Elias was already up, sweeping, leaves off the back deck of the lodge. Jackson watched him from the window of the dining hall, coffee in hand. There was no staff job requiring that. No one had asked him to do it. It wasn't in the itinerary. But Elias did it anyway, with the same quiet energy of a man who'd been picking up things no one noticed for a long time. And Jackson felt it for the first time. A tension between influence and authority. The first session that morning was a cross-team alignment workshop. Buzzwords, whiteboards, flip charts. Dylan, the same guy who joked that leadership was meaningless, was running it. Let's be real, Dylan said, arms crossed as he paced in front of the group. The company didn't crash because we finally learned how to move fast and quit asking for permission. Jackson sat in the back, silent. Someone raised a hand. But we almost lost 3 client accounts last quarter. Dylan waved it off. We fixed it. No one said who did the fixing. But Jackson had already guessed. Later that afternoon, Jackson followed a small group headed toward the ropes course. Halfway there, someone tripped, twisting an ankle, tumbling hard. Before the staff guide could respond, Elias was already kneeling beside her, checking for swelling, stabilizing her foot, guiding her breathing down. No panic, no spotlight, just calm. "You're okay. We're going to get you to the van," he said. "Are you one of the instructors?" the woman asked through gritted teeth. Elias shook his head, smiling softly. "Nah, just around a lot." The guide froze, clearly undertrained. Elias took charge without stepping over. He turned to the team and issued simple, clear instructions. "You, run back, grab towels and ice. You, help me keep her supported." Within 5 minutes, the injury was stabilized. The woman's breathing had calmed. She even laughed once. "Who are you?" someone asked from the group. "Elias," he said simply. "That's enough." Jackson wrote it down. He doesn't solve problems loudly. He dissolves chaos quietly. That night, Jackson ate alone at the far end of the dining area, watching. Dylan was at the center of the largest table, cracking jokes, holding court. Elias? He was moving between tables, not schmoozing, but making sure 2 people who hated each other weren't seated together, ensuring the new guy didn't get boxed out, checking if the junior dev with anxiety had enough space. And then, the moment that changed everything. One of the interns, probably 22, clearly overwhelmed, dropped a tray of food near the back counter. Plates shattered. Everyone froze. Dylan smirked. "Let's hope she doesn't code like she carries a tray," he muttered. A few nearby people chuckled nervously. Jackson watched Elias stand, calm. He didn't scold anyone. He knelt and helped her gather the broken pieces, handed her a napkin and said, "First mistake of the retreat. Congratulations. You got it over with early." She smiled, eyes glassy. He stayed beside her until she was okay, and that's when it hit Jackson like a punch to the chest. This company didn't survive because of innovation. It survived because someone kept holding it together, without ever asking for credit. That night, Jackson sat on the balcony outside his room and whispered a voice memo to himself. Elias, no title, no department power, but he carries the soul of this company. If he ever walks away, Veracor collapses in less than 6 months, and nobody, not even me, realized it until now. By the 3rd day of the retreat, the fake smiles had started to fade. People were no longer pitching ideas just to impress. The filters were slipping, and Jackson had seen enough to feel both disgusted and deeply concerned. Everyone still talked about culture, but no one seemed to carry it, except Elias. It began that morning with a planned team innovation challenge. Each team was given a pile of miscellaneous office supplies, rubber bands, markers, plastic tubing, binder clips, and told to build a functional contraption that could launch a tennis ball across a finish line 10 feet away. Jackson watched as people naturally split into their comfort groups. Dylan, of course, immediately started commanding his team like a boot camp drill sergeant, loud, bossy, claiming space and ownership over every good idea, even when they weren't his. Meanwhile, Elias quietly joined the smallest team in the corner, the leftover group. 3 interns, a quiet systems engineer, and someone from customer service who looked like she hadn't spoken more than 5 words the entire trip. No one was directing them. No one had a plan. Until Elias said softly, "Let's build something together. Doesn't have to be pretty, just has to work." For the next hour, Jackson watched him coach without ego. He asked questions, drew ideas out of people who normally got talked over, and slowly, the group that no one noticed started to build something efficient and clean. Then came presentation time. Dylan's team went first. They brought the energy, branded slogans, competitive flair. Their catapult worked, launched the ball hard and fast. Big cheers. Dylan fist-bumped 3 people on his way off the stage. Then Elias's team stepped forward. No fanfare, no intro speech, just a quiet demo. They pulled back their hand-built lever system, crafted from a plastic spoon, tape, and clipped elastic. The tennis ball launched clean, arcing through the air and landing dead center in the target. Accurate, quiet, efficient. The room actually clapped, but just as they were turning back to their seats, Dylan muttered loud enough for half the room to hear. "Cool. We're giving participation trophies to the janitor now." A few nervous laughs followed. Most looked away. Some snickered behind hands. Jackson felt his spine stiffen, his jaw clenched. But Elias? He didn't react. He simply helped his teammate gather the pieces, nodded to the event coordinator, and returned to his seat like nothing had happened. That was the moment Jackson knew. Elias wasn't numb. He was exhausted. That evening, Jackson triggered the test. An alert went out via internal comms. Urgent, unauthorized admin access detected. Possible data breach. He'd worked with the cybersecurity team the week before to simulate the incident. It was controlled, but convincing. Enough to expose how leadership responded in crisis. Within minutes, people were chattering. Did someone call IT? Do we have to shut systems down? Wait, where's the comms checklist? Dylan. He looked pale, eyes darting around, whispering about calling legal. Elias stood slowly, walked to the event facilitator and calmly said, "Can I borrow your laptop?" He logged in, pulled up the live incident report and began assigning tasks. Tarek, check the last 5 IP logs on Dev. Maria, send a Slack update with a holding message for internal staff. Jason, run a trace on the access point. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. He led. 12 minutes later, the breach was contained. The room exhaled. Jackson ended the simulation. A few people clapped. Dylan laughed it off like he knew all along. Well played, whoever planned that. But Jackson didn't laugh. He walked out to the balcony. Minutes later, Elias followed. "You knew it wasn't real, didn't you?" Jackson asked. Elias shrugged. Felt staged. But better to respond right than guess wrong. Jackson turned. "You always clean up everyone else's messes." Elias looked out into the trees. "Only when the mess hurts people." Jackson studied him. "Why do you do it? You're not paid to lead. You're not in the spotlight. You're not even in the org chart where you belong." Elias took a deep breath. "Because the culture left, but the people stayed. Someone had to hold it together. I just never thought it would be me." Jackson felt something shift. Not in Elias. In himself. The final afternoon of the retreat arrived. The closing circle was scheduled after lunch, just before checkouts and shuttles. Most attendees looked half-packed, already mentally back at their desks. But Jackson wasn't done. He requested a 10-minute speaking slot. No one questioned it. They assumed he was some consultant with a recap slide deck. At 4:17 p.m., the facilitator gave him the floor. No projector, no mic, just Jackson, standing in the center, hands calm, voice clear. "Hi, my name is Jackson Cole." Murmurs rippled. Someone turned their head. Another person froze mid-stretch. Jackson didn't pause. "I'm the founder of VeroCore, and for the past 4 days, I've been here, not as a CEO, but as a silent participant. Listening, watching, learning." He looked around the circle. Some faces paled. A few people looked confused. Dylan looked like he'd been hit with a wave of ice water. Jackson continued. "When I stepped away from this company for health reasons last year, I told myself the systems would hold. I told myself we were too big to collapse. And I almost believed it. He let the silence settle. But the truth is, I didn't know if the company would survive. I expected numbers to drop, culture to fall apart. I expected chaos. He turned slowly, his eyes resting on Elias. But that didn't happen, because someone caught what I dropped. Elias blinked, visibly stunned. People followed Jackson's gaze, slowly realizing what was happening. "Elias," Jackson said, "you didn't have a title for it. No bonus, no spotlight. But you led this company in a way I forgot was possible." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim folder. "I came here to figure out why Vericore didn't collapse. I leave knowing it's because of you." Then he faced the group again. 2. Many organizations reward noise. But this man, he leads with presence, not performance. He doesn't just manage crises. He carries people through them. Jackson handed the folder to Elias. His voice softened. "Effective immediately, you're being offered the position of Director of Integrity and Internal Operations. It's a new role, created for a leadership style we never measured, but desperately needed." The room was silent. Someone choked back a tear. Dylan shrank in his chair. Elias didn't speak right away. His hands gripped the folder. Then, finally, he said, "If I say yes, we do it different this time." Jackson nodded. "Exactly why it's yours." 6 months after the retreat, Vericore didn't just feel different, it was different. The change didn't come with a new logo or viral launch video. It came through a quiet internal ripple that started the moment Elias said yes to the new role. Director of Integrity and Internal Operations. A mouthful, Elias used to joke. But the title didn't matter. What mattered was what came next. Jackson didn't want to slap on reforms for show. He asked Elias to design the changes himself, from the inside out. And Elias didn't start with rules. He started with questions. What makes people feel safe here? What does respect look like between teams? Who does invisible work, and why do we treat it as invisible? Then came the rollout of Project Backbone, a company-wide reset of recognition and culture policies. It was messy, it was awkward, but it was honest. Each department had to nominate one team member every month, not for their output, but for their quiet impact. The glue roles, the emotional translators, the unseen mentors. The first month, over 400 nominations came in. People, who had never been publicly recognized in years, now had their names read in all-hands meetings. Someone in facilities, someone from client support, someone who had built the new team onboarding deck from scratch without being asked. Elias stood at the center of it, never loud, but present, always present. Jackson, meanwhile, began to show, up differently too. No more quarterly videos from a rooftop studio, no more distant updates. He showed up in team chats, joined onboarding lunches, started hosting monthly off-mic Fridays, casual, no-agenda Zoom calls where people could just talk. He didn't lead with vision, he led with listening. One day, an engineer named Luis emailed Elias, "I used to think my job was to make things work. Now I realize it's to make things feel possible. Thank you for changing that." Elias forwarded the email to Jackson. No caption, just the message. Jackson replied, "We built a company. You built a reason to stay in it." There were still challenges. Teams still clashed. Not every manager welcomed the change. Dylan resigned quietly 3 months after the retreat, but no one missed him. In his place, Elias helped hire someone who spoke 3 languages, coached youth soccer, and asked more questions than they answered in interviews. Culture was shifting. Then came the 1-year mark. Jackson stood at the front of a new training auditorium, not as a keynote speaker, but as a man who had nearly lost everything to his own blindness. He looked out at 250 new hires, some fresh from college, some returning to tech after years away. He told them the story, the retreat, the simulation, the moment he realized leadership wasn't about who built the company, but who held it together. He pointed to Elias, seated in the front row. That man didn't wait for permission to lead. And because of that, you're sitting in a company that remembers how to see people. After the session, a junior analyst came up to Elias. "Can I ask something?" Elias smiled. "Sure. Do you ever wish you'd pushed for a bigger title sooner?" Elias laughed. "Not bitterly, just truthfully. I used to. Then I realized, you don't need a title to change a company. You just need a moment when no one else is willing to step forward." He paused. Then you step in. And you stay. If this story reminded you that real leadership isn't loud, it's lasting, then share it. Hit like if you've ever been the glue no one noticed. Drop a comment below and tell us, who's the Elias in your story? Subscribe for more real stories that prove quiet strength changes everything.